First, our top story. It is the world is waiting for the reaction from the Kremlin after an explosive report identified one of the alleged assassins in the Salisbury poisonings as a Russian military hero, allegedly honored by Vladimir Putin himself. Now, it's the latest twist in a saga that has put divisions between Russia and the West front and center. Now, the man in question is Anatoly Vladimirovich Shepiga, an alleged Russian Special Forces colonel. Investigative websites Bellingcat and the Insider Russia say he's one of the men accused of poisoning former double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in March. British authorities had originally identified the man by his alias Ruslan Bushirov. He appeared on Russian TV with his alleged accomplice just weeks ago, saying that they had been on holiday in the UK at that time. All right, I did interview Roman Dobrokhotov earlier. He's a Russian journalist who helped break the story. He and his team at the Insider Russia spoke to sources in the Russian security services, and they gained access to passport database. I spoke to him and asked him what this suggests about Putin's alleged involvement.
Only Vladimir Putin could do it himself. First of all, we speak not just about some GRU agents. We speak about very prominent people. So one of them, Ruslan Bashirov, also known as Anatoly Shepiga, he was honored as hero of Russia, and this medal is given only personally by the president in Russia. So that means that he personally met with Shepiga, and of course he knew him very well after that. So when Putin says that these are not military guys and so on, he's absolutely evidently lying, because he personally gave him medal.
But what about Vladimir Putin himself? Do you think he will come out and say otherwise, change what he had said?
I think it will be easier for him just to keep the line and to deny everything as he used to do, because it will be too difficult to invent some other theory. So I think they would just try to discredit Bellingcat and the Insider, as they already started, and they will just ignore every other facts and reaction. But he still is in very difficult position, because we have all the evidence, and of course Great Britain will push on the Russian government trying to get the answer, so he's in a big political trouble.
Okay, and Roman, finally, something surprising to you as well is the fact that these two men were able to get a visa. Why is that surprising to you?
That will be in our next part of the issue that we are going to publish next week, because that's indeed surprising that people that had no business, no registered business at all, got a business visa in Great Britain. It's very difficult to do usually. You have to bring a lot of papers, and they had no papers at all, no real document history. So that was definitely some influence of Russian security services on British visa center, and we already know a lot about that, and we are going to publish it very soon.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Roman.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Roman there was talking about evidence that they had found and presented to the public. Did the governments learn anything today? Is that a smoking gun? Did they learn anything today that they didn't already know? Andrew?
I don't think so. I think the response from the British intelligence services, which has been not to deny these findings by Bellingcat, I think in a sense it proves the story as we've been told it so far by the British side. But I think what strikes me time and time again with this story is just the audacity at each step of this story. The more we learn, the more threadbare the cover story that these guys gave in their interview on Russian television appears. And just the fact that...
It's very brazen, isn't it?
It's very brazen. Brazen to the point where you would almost think that it's intentionally obvious. Why create a cover story involving prominent Russian colonels that can be so easily disproven, unless in a sense you kind of want to be seen.
But the question there is why. I'll put that to you, Andrei. I mean, why? Why is this the strategy that we're seeing playing out, and how is it playing out in Russia?
Well, from what we have seen, we can clearly see that Kremlin rewards loyalty, a good service, and doesn't tolerate dissent, and especially treason. Now we have a hero, a person, a Shepiga, who definitely considers himself a really good soldier and who disregards other people's interests, like for him attacking, well, we don't know, but it's between Russians.
So you think this is more domestic?
It is very, very much domestic, but when it takes us to the foreign arena. It's Skripal, who was attacked on British soil. And this is definitely a message to others like him. You can't cross the line, you have to toe the line. And if not, we will get you wherever you are, even abroad. And by the way, my own inside in Kremlin told me very similar case was Khodorkovsky, the Russian billionaire who was the richest, considered the cleanest oligarch, and yet the richest man. He was vulnerable as well when he didn't quite behave according to Kremlin rules. So these are, it's very much a different way of thinking.
Yeah, Eva, you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to say that in several European countries, just like 20, 30 years ago, there was death penalty for treason, especially in secret services. But we have moved to different reactions now. Imprisonment is chosen. So I think it's a very interesting discussion here, and I do agree it's an example or a message sent inside the country against anything that could cause national threat.
But the thing is, I was talking to Roman, the journalist, earlier, and I asked him whether in Russia, whether people believed the cover story, and they said, well, no one actually believed it in Russia, and no one actually cares much about, how they're perceived. Is that true, Andrei, your analysis?
They want to believe it because it portrays Russia as a powerful, almost superpower, which Russian pride
to
is
whom?
very
Who is the
important
audience?
motive. For the whole people who vote for Putin,
Okay.
Because stability is very important, and this is another way of assuring stability, because people want to regain their pride. They want, look, Euronews is discussing this situation. The world is talking about it. That could be the aim of whatever happened. The aim is that to hide. Well, we all know who did it, and yet we have no hard evidence. And this is exactly the way they wanted to portray. The same happened with Crimea. Nobody knows exactly who invaded it, but we know, but we were not.
Well,
it wasn't
we wait
approved.
for the evidence.
So that's.
Yeah, so now we are waiting actually for reaction from around the world, but we have a reaction from British Prime Minister Theresa May, because she talked about Russia during a speech at the UN General Assembly, and she appeared to make reference to the new revelations. Take a look at this.
States like Russia flagrantly breach international norms, from the seizing of sovereign territory to the reckless use of chemical weapons on the streets of Britain by agents of the Russian GRU.
Now, going back to the point you made, Andrew, about the brazenness of the way that this is done, is there a point where it has moved from being a covert war, let's use the word, to overt?
I think so, and I think that what Russia is doing now is pushing at the limits of this. I mean, if you look at this case from the very beginning, these two guys went over to the UK ostensibly because they have an interest in obscure cathedral towns, and they trailed chemical weapons around the place like they were carrying an overfilled cup of coffee. And then the story that's given out afterwards, I think, Andrew, what you say is very true. I mean, the story has to be incredible because people need to see that there's a message to those who are part of the Russian secret services who then turn their backs on it. So I think in a sense there's many messages, and I don't think the Russian state really wants to establish truth in this case or even create a convincing alternative truth. They want to establish doubt. They want to create uncertainty around everything so that people around the world simply can't put their finger really on who they can trust in these stories.
So how does one deal with that, Eva, from a political, legal point of view? How does one deal with that? Sanctions, asset freezes? I mean, do these really work? So how do you move forward?
I think national security is an issue that nations deal with because, as I said, each country, each state has a different law about it. But I think that it's an indication of how Russia would treat such cases. And this is maybe something for us to take in and not overlook. And I would say there are strong indications in this case that there was knowledge and involvement of the government. So I'm not sure we have the right to do anything about that.
And so no answer yet on how to deal with Russia at this point?
Well, at this point, we already have strong sanctions, and we already have a very careful approach to Russia. But at the same time, we have a diplomatic way of trying to deal with these things, and I think now it's well stated that we are aware of the ways they use.
All right, very quickly, Andrei, in 10 seconds, what do you think Putin wants to gain out of this? I mean, how does he want the world to treat him and react to him?
he wants to be re-elected, and he's now looking for a new way of prolonging his presidency. And for him, the result is that people, despite internal difficulties, they're rallied behind him because we are, he means surrounded by enemies, and you should be consolidated around Kremlin.